Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Is this my turn to ask you some questions?
Yeah.
So, as I said, I have an 8th grader and I have a 3rd grader, and I'm just really curious to hear from each of you, how this, living through this pandemic that we're currently in has kind of affected you personally right now, and if it's changed at all your outlook on the future and on the trajectory of your lives. And I know those are a lot of big questions, but you can take those wherever you want.
Sadia, would you like to answer first?
Sure. So specifically, I would say it's changed my perspective in relation to knowing that we have to use the time that we have wisely. And for me, I remember the last day of school that we were in, it was just an average day, and then all of a sudden everything changed. So it did make me a little nervous, and I was very anxious at first. But then I looked at the bigger picture, and I realized that I really have to take advantage of all the opportunities that I have and the time in school that I did have, and kind of put energy into any opportunities that I have in the future. So that's what I would say.
And as for the question as to kind of the coping, situation with the pandemic, as a junior, it was a big shock. SATs were moved around, ACTs are moved around. We had to re-register, replan. I know some people probably had jobs lined up maybe for the summer as well. I guess one of the pieces of advice I could give is that just take advantage of the time you have right now, because as a student, my stress levels in school have come way down. I've had time to do much more of what I love. I love to read all the time. I love listening to music. I love going outside. And I think when you're in this pandemic, you need to realize that there's things out there other than, staying on the phone all day or social media. There's just, there's so much to look forward to as well. And that hopefully in the future, I plan on attending college next year as well. So this pandemic hasn't changed too much of what I hope for in the future. I know a bunch of colleges are possibly going SAT optional. So that's actually very intriguing for me. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm at right now.
So in my office, there's many, many issues that we are working on all the time. And sometimes it's hard for us to prioritize because we want to do so many things at once. So could you share with me from your perspective, what do you think are the top 3 issues that you think are the priorities in Berkshire County? Maybe around social justice or criminal justice, or just the things that you see going on or in your schools that you would suggest that maybe my office might want to focus on.
Carolyn, would you like to go first?
Oh, yeah, sure. In my school specifically, I know I can name one, maybe I want to say vaping is one. I know people don't talk about it a lot, but I think that it's starting out young, in middle school, and then it's just progressing kind of into high school, unfortunately. And it's really sad because people will market children with flavors and gums and peer pressure, and it's really sad. So I would say vaping is another one. It's definitely top. And then maybe for 2, it's hard to say because I can't really say bullying is a huge issue in Lenox. Obviously, there are probably some kids who maybe feel not the greatest, but I don't see a lot of that there. So I would probably say vaping for now. Just start off small. Vaping.
Yeah. How about you?
I totally agree with that. Vaping is definitely a big problem. And then to add on to that, I'll also say discrimination within the school system. So not throughout my journey in elementary school, middle school, and high school, there has been a few racial issues, and just I feel like maybe involving the community and realizing our diversity and our potential would help solve those issues. And then I can't really think of a third. Yeah.
So, something that we see a lot in my office is kind of around dating relationships and a lot of, I think, really unhealthy relationships. We see cases where particularly boys are pressuring the girls to, send inappropriate photos via text, and there's a lot of pressure around that. Is that something that you think teenagers here in Berkshire County are struggling with?
Sorry, Sadie, if you can speak. I definitely think that's an issue. I'm really glad you brought that up, actually. I actually don't have social media, but a lot of my friends do. And I know there's definitely been issues or rumors about this girl sent this to him and he screenshotted it, or my friend just heard from my other friend, from my cousin's neighbor, that this girl did that. And it is really unhealthy, especially because a lot of kids my age now consider dating or relationships via the phone. Like, you meet someone on Instagram and you're like, well, this is my boyfriend. I trust him, even though they've never met, never talked before. But all they see is profile photos. And I think it's very unhealthy, especially because you have no idea who you're actually talking to. And it's just, if you rely on like a phone or a camera to connect with somebody, it's basically almost impossible, because there's no way you can build a trustable, healthy relationship on the fact that you guys liked each other's photos or something. And I think a lot of girls out there, and probably even boys too, feel very insecure when they were asked to send, I guess, photos or certain things that probably make them uncomfortable, but they feel like they have to do, because that's kind of just where our generation is at right now with all this tech that we have at the tip of our fingers. So,
yeah. What do you think, Sophia?
Yeah, I totally agree with Caroline. And to build off of that, I would say it's so dangerous because it's becoming a norm, and it's just what people are becoming used to, and it's becoming like a taught behavior within even middle schools, I would dare to say, right now. So definitely addressing that issue would solve some things.
When you look at what teenagers were doing and what was bothering them from when I was in high school versus now, I think the big change that we see is that when I was in high school, there was more concern over teenagers using drugs and alcohol and experimenting sexually, and teen pregnancy and STD type issues. Whereas now, I think the big concern that we see are teenagers who feel depressed and are struggling with depression. And that's I think it's a big change. Is that something, is that something that you've thought about as a young person? Or is that something that you notice with your peers, people struggling with depression and with mental health issues?
I haven't noticed serious depression in my school, but I have noticed that mental health issues are certainly still alive and active in kids. A lot of kids won't admit it, or they don't want to admit it, but factors such as schoolwork, teachers, friends, and again, social media can be very depressing. You're seeing photos of other people trying to look up to them, or like, I can't be like them. It makes someone feel really uncomfortable inside. With their body image, or even just who they are. So it's really important that people realize that if you have a problem, or if you're getting sad, like, you need to maybe take a break from the phone for a day, or just not compare yourself to what you see online and what's around you, because that, I find, is a lot of sources of kids being depressed, maybe, or maybe not mentally in the right mind.
What do you think, Sophia?
I totally agree with Carolyn. And in my school specifically, we have a club that I'm a part of called Peace Jam. And I believe last year, our main focus was about mental illness and just addressing everything and informing our school about the problems that we each share. And I would say that through my personal observations, there has been an increase in anxiety. And I definitely would credit that to the gun violence within schools. I remember my freshman year, we had the March for Our Lives, and I went to that, and just seeing the whole movement progress throughout our school, the stress levels within the students was it was frankly terrifying, and that I feel like it definitely adds on to the mental health issues that we are facing.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you bring up March for Our Lives, particularly for this particular Strive conference, because I know this because I am the mom of an 8th grader who's about to graduate and go to high school. And those kids were in 1st grade when Newtown happened. And that happened in a 1st grade that felt, very familiar to our community. And so that was, that introduced the kind of lockdown drills that our kids have grown up with that we certainly didn't need those when I was in school. And I think I can imagine that there's got to be a link between growing up with that and with the depression, like you're talking about. Like, I think that sounds really insightful. But the March for Our Lives to me was so inspiring because, when I was a parent and this happened in a 1st grade, I expected parents to take to the streets and to demand a change. And it just didn't happen until the teenagers from Marjorie Stoneham Douglas High School and teenagers all over the country, they had to bring their voices to this issue for the conversation around guns and gun safety to change. And to me, that is incredibly hopeful because I think that your generation, you are a generation of leaders across the country, but right here in our community. And it's our job to support you in your leadership because you did something that parents of my generation failed to do. So I'm very inspired for the future, and I'm very inspired to meet you and see the work you're doing with the Youth Advisory Board. And, I thank you for the kind of mentorship that you're providing to our 8th graders because it's an intimidating transition. So I'm really, really grateful that you're doing this kind of work and being leaders to them and leaders in our community. So thank you both for your work.
We also want to thank you, everyone, for watching today. And we want to thank DA Harrington for sharing her time. This has been a great experience. On behalf of the District Attorney Youth Advisory Board, I'm Sadia.
And I'm Carolyn Cass.
And we hope you stay safe and happy and have a great summer.